IT leaders and future IT leaders. Welcome to CIO Talk with Riaz. This is your host, Riaz Yusuff, a Chief Information Officer, advisor, and mentor. What is unique about my podcast is that I handle the interviews myself. So you get to hear the perspectives of two leaders, not just one. Hey, before we head on to this episode, I want to personally invite you to join my IT leadership community, where myself and other IT leaders share ideas and content that will help you to advance your career as well as the objectives of your organization. Participants can ask their questions in the group as well. Go to LinkedIn and find a group named IT Leadership Community led by Riaz. That is spelled as RIAZ. I look forward to seeing you in the group. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of CIO Talk. Today, I'm excited to interview Greg Kozak, who is a Chief Information Officer at the College of Lake County in Illinois. Welcome, Greg. Thank you for joining us.
It's exciting to be here with you.
Thank you. Greg, ever since I moved back to Illinois, we have connected several times, right? So I feel like I know you for a long time, although it's only been a few months. But for the benefit of my audience, could you tell about your current role and your career journey in terms of how you got here where you are today?
Sure. So as you mentioned, currently I'm the Chief Information Officer at the College of Lake County, which is in Lake County, Illinois, between Chicago and Milwaukee. And I've been here for just over 4 years. My journey to get here somewhat is similar to yours, as we've talked, in the sense that I began my career for about 20 years in corporate America, where I felt good about the work I was doing and gained a lot of skills and perspectives on managing a large and complex organization. I ultimately got to the point at that prior organization where I managed the IT solutions area. So the part of technology was looking at new things, not just keeping the wheels on the bus, but figuring out how we move forward. And I did that globally. So I had a little less than 500 people globally reporting into me. And that was fun. But at some point, I realized that there's more to life than simply making progress in the corporate halls. And I've always appreciated higher education and knew it was important. So after about 20 years in corporate, I used that as an opportunity to say, what more is there in life? And I thought that if I moved out of the corporate world into the not-for-profit higher education world, that my work in technology could be more meaningful and probably more impactful in terms of people's lives. So I worked at a private college in Lake Forest, Illinois for about 10 years. And at that time, my kids were going to college. And I knew their friends and their friends' families. And many of those kids came to the College of Lake County and Harper College and other community colleges. And I realized what a huge difference the community college makes for the lives of individuals in a lot of different situations, especially first generation students. It's an incredibly powerful springboard to get past their high school education and oftentimes a family legacy that doesn't see value in education past high school. I've also seen not only how getting a degree, an associate's degree, and perhaps progressing on to a bachelor's degree makes a difference in the life of the student, but it also makes a profound difference in the life of their family. Their parents start to understand the incredible economic and meaning difference that a college degree can have, but also their siblings also gain hope and aspiration to also follow in that path. And so I found that as I understood the difference community colleges make, that I wanted to be part of that because I've been driven to kind of my life motto is to make a difference for a place that makes a difference. And I saw the difference community colleges make, and I said, I want me some of that. And so when the opportunity arose for the Chief Information Officer role at the College of Lake County, I applied for and was fortunate enough to get it. And so here I am talking to you today.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that Greg, you're right. That's a chain reaction of goodness, right?
Yeah.
That's once you're into it, and then you basically anything that we do, we are impacting not just us and our family, but also others, right? In a positive way, or sometimes it could be in a negative way. So glad to hear the career journey you had. I was actually thrilled to the last time we spoke to know that you and I worked for the same company in Lincolnshire, Illinois. But different timing though. I didn't expect that kind of.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm sure I was in India many times while you two were in India, just in a different city. So at the same company, but never once meeting each other in person at that time.
Exactly. Well, actually, when you were in Chennai, I was in Chennai too. I was growing up at the time in Chennai, so uh, it's interesting that we had
Yeah.
some crossover without realizing it. Great. Greg, could you talk about a project or an experience that you are most proud of? It need not be in your current job, it could be from your previous jobs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, many of us are fortunate to have a variety of opportunities to pull from, but the one I think I'll talk about is at my current job. And it ties to that. The reason it's meaningful is that it ties to that making a difference for a place that makes a difference. Technology is no longer a realm of, some widgets and tools in one corner of the world, but it impacts everything in life now. Everything is emboldened and enabled by technology to do things differently and often better than it was able to do without technology. And so we're about halfway through a project at the college that is reinventing and reimagining our student portal. And I had a vision of a portal and technology as a whole in terms of how it could help students move along towards their stated goal. And in this case, I was really smitten by an approach of workflow called goal oriented workflow. So, if you think about the customer job to be done, or why does somebody come to a community college? They're looking to get something, not just a class or two, but perhaps a degree or certainly a course set of courses that they could then use to transfer to a 4-year college.
Hmm.
So each student has a slightly different goal, but a goal nonetheless. One of the challenges with college students is they're in this betwixt and between space between being dependent and having others make decisions for them, and then suddenly being thrust in an environment where legally and oftentimes in a family situation, they're accountable for their own progress. Well, a student portal can either be a list of links to help them find the thing they're looking for, or it can be transformative in the sense that it helps them move along on their journey to get from where they are to where they want to be. So, goal oriented workflow in a student portal means that every time a student opens up that portal, they're being presented with the next smallest step they need to take in order to continue their transition towards their goal. And so if it's summertime and you come into the portal, maybe what you see is, hey, it's time to register for classes, and not just any classes. Here are the 5 classes we recommend you taking this semester so that you can be closer to your stated goal. Oftentimes, students end up taking classes that don't get them farther along on their journey. So they're wasting time and they're wasting money. Maybe they're learning some valuable stuff. As long as they know that that class isn't necessary, they can explore and take things. But oftentimes we have students on limited time budgets and financial budgets. And so any class that isn't necessary is a lost opportunity for them. So in building the new student portal at the College of Lake County, which should be soft rolled out this coming February, we've created an environment where it's contextually aware of the student's situation. Like I was saying before I got distracted, if it's summertime, they might register for classes. If it's the first semester of class, maybe they should be setting up a meeting with their advisor. Or maybe if it's the third week of class, maybe it's time to pay a bill. Or maybe it's time to, start to find clubs and other activities that they could get involved with because feeling connected to the institution and to their faculty and their peers is a key indicator of their likelihood to stick with it or not. And so all those things can be quote unquote manufactured by the portal every time they interact with it. So it's not static. it's personalized and contextually aware of where they are, and it lets them know what the next steps are that will most directly get them to their stated goal. And so creating the concept of that, helping the college become aware of the possibility for technology to be transformative, and then building that and now getting close to releasing it, I would say is probably one of the most exciting experiences I've had in the recent 5 to 10 years.
Excellent. That sounds like an exciting project that you have. And you are right. When we start a car, the first thing we look at is the dashboard, right? We want to make sure we have enough gas. We want to make sure the check engine light is not on and stuff like that. So the portal that you're building is really the dashboard for students to check to see how are they doing, where they need to go, and what they need to focus for the day and stuff like that.
Right. And one of the things you probably notice is being new to the environment, you probably also turn on your GPS to say, I want to get here, help me
Yes,
understand the twists and turns in getting there. And that's what the
exactly.
portal does. So it
Mm,
tells them when to turn, it tells them where to go, but they get to plug in the destination.
exactly. The very good comparison. Yeah, great. Greg, as you know, we are all hearing about this buzzword, digital transformation everywhere, right? So I'm curious to know, what does digital transformation mean to you?
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit around that when we talked about the student portal, right? So it's an opportunity um, to focus in on our customers. So in higher ed, that's our student, our faculty, our staff. With optimized, and I'm going to speak about three things here, with optimized people, processes, and then technology that will enable that thing to work in an optimized fashion. So digital transformation isn't just replacing, a V6 engine with a V8 engine and expecting your car to be better. It's reconceiving what the car is all about. How do you want to transport yourself to wherever it is you want to go? So digital transformation needs to first and foremost understand that there is an organization that needs to be focused around the problem that we're trying to solve, or the customer is what I call job to be done. And that could include, like I said, organization, it could include roles, it could include skills or knowledge that the individuals need. And if you just replace the engine on the car, it doesn't make the person a better driver. So they're not going to get there any faster. They're just going to waste more gas in doing so. The second thing it needs to be aware of is improved policies and processes. So, how can we create the environment with that organizational structure so that we're getting people to where they want to go in the optimal pathway? So, that's like the GPS saying you can either choose the shortest path, the fastest path, or the most fuel efficient path, right? So, define that process, and then, and only then, should you start to implement technology that enables and engages the customer in moving through that organizational structure and those processes to achieve their job. So, digital transformation isn't just digital. It's, the old hard facts, but oftentimes people forget that and they get enamored by the shiny, bright object and buy it and think things are going to be different. That shiny bright object can make things different, but only if it's in the right context and only if it's meant to be an adjunct to the path. And then it can do marvelous and miraculous things. It can make things much easier. It can make things much more engaging. It can make things much more compelling in getting people who might be partially motivated to be completely motivated to where they want to go, because the experience has become much more engaging and compelling. And so um, that's kind of how I view digital transformation. I know that's kind of a cheap answer to it, but I really don't want to forget that digital transformation is not just about the digital. It's more about the transformation.
You're making a great point, Greg. Although the label is digital transformation, it's all about business transformation, right? Making the
Yeah.
business transformation, utilizing the digital tools and technology as part of one of the tools package, right? So that's all
Yeah.
it is. Good. So speaking of digital transformation, what can organizations do to digitally transform themselves?
Yeah. So I started going through that, and I think, it all begins with first and foremost focusing in on your customer. So in different parts of industry, we have we all have customers, and in higher education, we call our customer a student. But I think recognizing that them as a customer is pretty valuable in the following sense, that they have a choice, right? Typically, a student is required to be in a seat taking a class, but a customer can choose what class, what seat, or what route, maybe even not to go to school at all. So understanding that we have people who are adults who have made independent decisions to be in our institutions. So focusing in on them means learning about what their journey map is like. What's it like to be a student, right? You get this initial high when you start your first semester, but then classes hit you hard, and then you start to deal with, do I have the time to do this and work full time? And you get a little bit of a dip. And then you realize that it's only when you find that you're surrounded by caring faculty, staff members, and fellow students that you find the connection that gives you the structure and the community in which you can turn around and continue to succeed. So understanding their journey is important, and understanding, as I've said a couple times at this interview, what their job to be done is. Why are they quote unquote hiring us
Mhm.
to give them an education versus hiring a four-year institution or going to on-the-job training or any other things? So once you understand your customer and their motivation and their goal, well, then you can understand the people changes, the process changes, and the technology changes that will help them best get to that goal in, as I've said before, the optimal, most compelling, and most engaging way possible. And so to transform the thing I've learned, it's so easy to think you know the answer because you understand technology. I understand the market space. I understand a lot about what each of these tools do and can't do. But if I don't understand the customer, and what I'm talking about is an intimate understanding, what strategic design would call an empathy for the customer, right? If I don't have that, then I'm going to implement the wrong thing. It may look really shiny, but it's the difference between a Ford and a Ferrari, right? Which is going to get me where I get in the way that I want to get there and enable my customer to be happiest with getting there the way they want to, not the way I want to.
That's a great point, Greg. At Harper, we see number of students enrolling from other districts for specific online programs, right? Living in other district, they
Yep.
enroll. I'm sure you see the same pattern too,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So having that understanding, what motivates them? Why do they come to Harper? Why do they come to College of Lake County? And how can we serve them better? And then focusing on that customer, fulfilling the customer need is all about digital transformation.
Right. And to kind of think about that too is that they've got many choices now that the world of online has opened up.
Yep.
Right. So Harper, College of Lake County, and many others have started to offer fully online programs, which is important. That allows our students to continue to be able to work full time, flex their study hours around their work schedule and other obligations. But they could also choose a fully online institution like Southern New Hampshire University or Governor's State that have great reputations, but are different. And so, how are we creating a product that's the most compelling product for our students?
Mhm.
And how are we capturing those students by letting them know about it and making it easy for them to take advantage of it by signing up?
Great point. Okay, Greg, could you tell us about your current IT infrastructure layout at College of Lake County?
Yeah, so Riaz, I was hoping you could clarify this just a little bit for me in terms of, do you want to know the technology layout or do you want to know the organizational layout?
Technology layout.
Technology, perfect. Okay. So we try to be fairly um, standardized around the technologies that we have. And so you can start the description from one end or the other. Let me start it from the middle and work out.
Mhm.
And so, kind of at the center of the circle is where we store our data. And for the most part, we are a Microsoft SQL Server environment running on HP servers. We recently moved off of DB2. By recently, I mean yesterday. We completed a move for our PeopleSoft environment to move off of DB2 onto SQL Server. And so I've got incredible people working at the college who are able to get that stuff done with minimal or no disruption. That's truly changing the wheels on the bus while it's in motion. Then, as I mentioned, we have a server infrastructure. that is predominantly virtualized using VMware and is using HP server technology around that. And the advantage of standardization is that it allows these things to be fungible, right? You can move a server from one platform to another, physically or virtually. You know it's going to work the same way. There aren't any issues. We run it mostly in a Microsoft Windows Server environment, so the operating system tends to be common across all of our implementations. And then we serve that up through a network that is Cisco based for the most part. And then it gets served up to our desktops, which are decreasingly HP thin client desktops and increasingly HP laptops. Um, and that's allowing us, just like the rest of the world, to acknowledge the fact that the modern worker wants to be more mobile in terms of how they and where they are able to do their work. And enabling that through technology gives us the freedom as an organization to implement policies and procedures that allow individuals to be remote. Now, on top of that, one of the challenges that we might have, let's say, with regards to cybersecurity, is that, like all community colleges, we don't have the depth and the deep pockets that many corporations around us do, especially banks, right? They have to be very secure around their technology. So, to some extent, we're seeing a shift in that infrastructure towards the cloud. I know you want to talk about the cloud a little bit later, but my sense is that we'll increasingly shift some of the burden and responsibility of that infrastructure on premises to an infrastructure off premises, whether that's platform as a service, where we're just moving the servers there and still running them, or software as a service, where we're also giving the requirements to run and secure the data and the processes to somebody else full time. But I know we'll get to that a little bit later.
Sounds good. So I was going to ask you about your infrastructure strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. So is that your infrastructure strategy, moving on-premise applications off-premise and not having to deal with the maintenance locally? Could you tell more about your infrastructure strategy?
Yeah, so I think like the rest of the world, like location, location, location in real estate, it's cloud, cloud, cloud in IT. There's many benefits to organizations like ours who recognize the criticality of the staff we have and trying to optimize the business impact that our staff has to high impact work rather than focusing them on operational work. And so it's how do we move the right things off-prem so that we can have our staff. We're not looking to reduce staff. We just have so much work that we can't get to because our staff is busy with operational work that we want to free them up to be able to focus in on that higher order work, that more impactful work than simply keeping the lights on overnight. And so the cloud provides us the ability to give much of the operational work to somebody else. We also, as far as infrastructure, realize that it's integration that's critical. So, when you move to cloud, you trade one thing for another. You trade control for giving some of your problems to other people, but you also create a divided world in which you've got some data living in one place and some data living in another place. And unlike the on-prem model, where you can tie a different SQL Server database to another SQL Server database and still have integrated data, when it's cloud, it's hard to pull data from one cloud location to another cloud location
Yes.
without recreating an on-premises data structure to house all of that. And so some of that infrastructure strategy is how do we find an integrated cloud-based solution rather than a stable of multiple solutions? And just like, in the olden days, for those of you who are old enough like me to remember that there used to be a battle about whether you use desktop technology that was best of breed or a suite. So, young kids out there was a time when you would buy a word processor from one company and a spreadsheet from another and a presentation from a third. Well, now it's second nature that you buy them all from a single organization. The same thing I think will increasingly happen in the cloud for organizations such as ours, where we don't have the wherewithal to do that complicated infrastructure integration.
Got it.
So, our strategy for the next 3 to 5 years is to move to the cloud, but not in a carefree manner, but to do so in a thoughtful way in which we can get integration, where we can get better data and reporting, in which we can get probably better operational efficiencies and effectiveness.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about the integrated cloud solution instead of having silos within the cloud products, because we are feeling some of that pain already.
Yeah, there are organizations out there who have a concept called a composable architecture, right? Where you kind of choose best of breed in the cloud, and then you use your internal staff and strategy to tie all that together. That requires a certain level of expertise and breadth of staffing to do all that work that I don't think community colleges are well prepared to do.
Agreed, fully agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked about your cloud strategy a little bit. I just want to ask you, so would you consider yourself as a cloud first organization going forward?
That's a great name for it. Yeah, so I would say that when I look at our purchases over the past 3 years,
Mhm.
they've almost exclusively been cloud-based. And when I look at our upgrades of solutions that we choose to upgrade, we will often take advantage of a vendor's cloud solution rather than an on-premises solution. So a great example would be Blackbaud's Razor's Edge, which is a fundraising tool, which we had on premises. They did an upgrade and we said, let's move to their cloud version. So cloud first is definitely an infrastructure decision. The other thing that cloud allows us to do is to get rid of the maintenance windows that we have, which is not just a huge drain of IT time in strange hours of the night and the weekend, but it's an interruption to our operations. A modern organization recognizes that students are doing their homework at 3 in the morning or are thinking about signing up for a class on a Sunday afternoon. And if we have downtime on those uh, points, we create friction for that individual in getting their job done. And when you move to the cloud, they have much more redundancy and resiliency to effect change without bringing the service down. And so that's a nice benefit of cloud. I'm going to say one more thing. I realize it's not necessarily your question, but one thing I've noticed that cloud solutions are increasingly providing is workflow driven solution sets. And you may recall when I talked about our student portal,
Mhm.
it was predicated upon this goal oriented workflow that's helping students understand their next smallest step. Workflow, I think, is an incredible benefit that many cloud providers are recognizing, and many companies are building into their cloud solutions they didn't build into their on-prem solutions, certainly not at the same level. And you can imagine, just like this solution I talked about with our portal is making our students more effective,
Mhm.
process reengineering and workflow automation makes staff way more functional, way more effective, and allows them, like I was talking about with our IT staff, to focus in on higher order work rather than work that can just simply be automated and be handed off from X to Y to Z, and allows human beings to do what we do best: make decisions, talk to our customers, and improve solutions rather than just living with them.
That's a great call out, Greg. Actually, you're right. Now that I think about it, the more and more the cloud products are coming out, they are improving the workflow. Even the on-prem products such as PeopleSoft and SAP, they attempted to improve their workflow, but it's way better in the cloud world compared to the on-premise workflow
Yeah.
solutions. This is a great point. That's a good byproduct in going into cloud. Excellent, excellent. Well, as you know, Greg, October is a month of security awareness. So I have to ask you this security related question. What security measures do you suggest for organizations to improve their security posture and to protect their institution?
Yeah. Security, and sometimes just shortened to cyber, which kind of drives me crazy, but cybersecurity is certainly something that is the darling child of the technology world right now, getting all the love and attention. And it's very easy like it was when the internet first started out, to just start picking and choosing the shiniest object and the most interesting thing that you happen to be interested in. However, if you go down the cybersecurity route without a clear plan, and I'm talking about a multi-year framework that says between now and 5 years from now, here's what we're going to do in the order in which we're going to do it, you set yourself up to be making decisions in a haphazard manner. And as I have conversations with our chief information security officer, if you don't have a plan and something bad happens, you open yourself up to somebody saying, well, why didn't you fix that? And you don't really have much of a comeback except to say that we hadn't gotten to it yet. When you have a plan and you haven't gotten to something yet and a bad thing happens and somebody asks that same question, you can say, we understood that that was a risk, but we prioritized other issues as higher risk and we're addressing those things first.
Mhm.
And you can't solve cybersecurity overnight. You probably can never solve cybersecurity. I like to say if the NSA can get hacked, anybody can get hacked. What
True.
you want to do is ensure that it's harder to hack you than somebody next door. And so somebody goes next door to avoid the hassle. So that plan needs to start, and there's plenty of frameworks out there, right? NIST has them. Um, there's a number of them that you can follow, right? I'm not going to recommend one over the other, but you can find the 3 or 4 that are most popular. And like a strong password, it's not important what it is that you choose, it's important that you do it.
Mhm.
So find a structure, a framework, and follow it. And you'll get the highest risk things done first, lower risk things or more rare things done later, or harder things done later. But patch the leaks on the boat first before you think about changing the hull out or anything like that. So that's a long way of expressing the fact that the common block and tackle things in cybersecurity are avoiding breaches. And so probably starting with that, with getting the proper uh, monitors and proactive software on your equipment, whether it's servers or desktops, then doing external perimeter testing and penetration testing, doing internal penetration testing, right? This is kind of more sophisticated. Um, in my mind, though, ultimately you want to do all that stuff and you have to do all that stuff and keep it up to date with patching, et cetera. But we need to shift our mindset in cybersecurity from the question of what would we do to avoid getting hacked
Mhm.
to what do I wish I would have already done if I just discovered that we were hacked? Because as I said, if the NSA can get hacked, any of us can get hacked, and maybe we already have been, and we just don't know about it. It takes over 190 days on average for an organization to realize that they've been breached,
Mhm.
right? So there's that long period of time where you've been compromised and you don't know it. Once you get the basic blocking and tackling done, start thinking through next. How do I start to identify activities that would lead me to believe that we've been breached or not? How do I do that proactive detection
Mhm.
rather than just the passive prevention? And again, the frameworks take you down this pattern as well, but that's how we're trying to address it at the College of Lake County. And we're several years into a multi-year initiative on that.
Okay, those are great inputs, Greg. Um, you are right. We need to constantly monitor and track where things are at. In addition to improving the security posture, we also have to monitor and see how things are working fine so that we can tweak and, like you said, make it harder and harder for the attackers. That should be the goal, right?
Right.
I don't know if anyone can 100% bulletproof their environments from the attackers, but at least if the harder you make it, it's less enticing for the attackers, and then they look the next door or elsewhere for their
Right.
job. So
Yeah.
great. Greg, as you and I know, working remotely has becoming more and more normal ever since we had COVID. So I'm wondering, what is your experience? What is your department's experience in regards to working remotely, and do you have any suggestions for my audience regarding that?
Yeah, I think like many IT organizations, our experience has been great. As I mentioned before on my career journey, Now, I was used to managing people globally, which means remotely, for many years, and it worked. And in IT, there's easy ways to know if somebody's being productive or not. So, you can kind of do a sniff test with employees to know whether they're slacking off or whether they're doing their job. But that is the challenge for a manager, right? Is to how to continue to uh, achieve productivity. What
Mhm.
we found, and I've divided this in two ways, in terms of being more efficient and productive, IT was way more productive working full time remotely because we didn't have interruptions. There are studies done by various folks that say it's 24 to 29 minutes to regain your sense of concentration when you've been interrupted. And that's especially work done with programmers,
Mhm.
right? So somebody's thinking through the code that they want to write. They haven't gotten it all down on paper, but their mind's spinning up about what are the next things I'm going to do. They're putting stuff on the stack to use programmer language before they've taken it off. But then you ask them a question that causes them to lose their concentration.
Yeah,
Well, then they've got to start that all up again. It takes on average between 24 and 29 minutes to get back to that same place.
which is very
Well, without
expensive.
those, yeah. So without those interruptions, people are able to get a lot more done. And
Mhm.
without those interruptions, they're able to really focus in on their tasks. And finally, what we found was without those interruptions, and this isn't by intent and it's not necessarily something I'm proud of, but without those interruptions, people ended up working longer. There weren't the same notifications to say the workday's over or it's time to get up and go to lunch. And so people tended to work just more consistently long hours. Again, I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but our experience was that. And
Mhm.
so we had measurably better productivity and efficiency. But the challenge I see is around effectiveness. And that has to do, in my terms, with the sense of how are you maintaining your sense of connectedness with the people you work with?
Mhm.
And how are you maintaining a sense of culture that makes the place you're working at special rather than just being a free agent who jumps into an organization for a while and then leaves? All organizations had some amount of culture when they were in person
Mhm.
that was made more fragile or brittle when we worked remotely. And so the challenge with working remotely was not to abandon remote work, but it was how to allow that, what I'll call effectiveness, or that community spirit and that culture to remain and grow, even though it might have to be different, while continuing to support remote work.
Mhm.
So, one of the things we've done is we have two activities a month we do in our IT organization that help us stay connected to the school. It might be that if you're on campus, hey, let's go to a student event, whether it's a play, a sporting event, or something that physically gets us into one place. Or it could be, hey, let's do a trivia
Mhm.
contest for an hour, or let's do a virtual tour of some of the new buildings that we're putting up around our campuses. Um, let's look at a chance for an hour a month to do some ongoing education on a topic that's valuable to all of us. Let's look at some other kind of what different people might call fun activities, but they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes
Mhm.
for the organization as a whole to stay connected to each other. Some of them physically, you got to be there in 3D with each other to get it,
Mhm.
but the majority of them virtual so that we can all jump on a Zoom call, go into breakout rooms, continue to connect with each other in a random way, but not lose that spirit of just talking to other people and accidentally learning about what they're doing. And
Mhm.
in that exchange of ideas, coming out of that conversation with a new idea of how to do your work and having influenced somebody else on how to do their work just by casual interaction. So I think that's our department's experience with working remotely. We're continuing to be a pilot for the College of Lake County in terms of remote work, and the college should have a formal policy
Mhm.
expanding our remote work formally to the rest of the college early in the calendar year of 2023.
Got it. Great. Thank you for sharing that information. Great.
Sure.
Wonderful. Greg, my leadership community is basically a number of my audience are existing IT leaders, but some of them are wannabe IT leaders. They are budding IT leaders, not a manager or director yet. So, what
Yeah.
advice do you have for budding IT leaders?
Yeah, good question. One of the things I tell new leaders in IT, especially, is stop being a parent. So being a parent, right? So what I've found is that lines of business are really talented at coming to IT and saying, we want to purchase X, Y, or Z, or we want to be allowed to do A, B, or C. And when I was younger in my career, I would always respond with going, well, that's not in the company's best interest. And let me tell you why. It's either expensive or we have a tool that already does that, or it's a lot of work to implement that thing. I could come up with a lot of excuses that
Mm,
were all legitimate. But the end result of that response was that people started seeing me as the person who would say no.
mm,
And one day I just decided I'm going to start saying yes. And so I want to be my customers' biggest cheerleader for whatever it is they want to do. But I'm not going to take on responsibility for all the decisions that I was taking on before.
mm,
What I found as a result of doing that is we all get wacky requests. And I'm not trying to pick on any part of any organization. I probably make 50 wacky requests a day, right? But if somebody sits alongside you and says, that's a great idea, let's figure out how we can do it. Suddenly, I have to be the parent as the requester. You've stopped being my parent and telling me why it's a bad idea. And now I have to come to the realization of, oh, I don't have budget to do that. Or, oh, we completely have to change the way we interact with this other department in the college because now we're doing it differently.
mm.
Or, well, I've got to take all the data that's 90% of the way there in a similar product, and I've got to recreate that all in mine. And then I've got to do the integration back and forth. When you allow the individual you're working with to start to own the problems that their request is bringing up, oftentimes they are the ones who say, forget it. And by being their cheerleader, what you've shown them is that you're there as a business leader. You're there to help them get their job done. You're not there to say no. But if you're good at your job, you'll help them appreciate why the correct answer is no
Mm,
without saying no for them. And so not being the person who says no and just saying yes was a tremendous relief in my life and really started to accelerate my career. People saw me as an ally, a guy who quote unquote gets what business is about, even though the end result was still no. And it was all about how I approached the problem. Um, and I guess soon after that, I came about this model of by talking to the business about what it is they want to do, it forced me to understand their customers, who
mm,
are my customers, right? And so if you know your customers as well as, or sometimes even better than your internal customers do, you suddenly gain an authority in the organization that nobody else has. And what I found in IT is we have this great model. Before I talked about systems thinking, it's also known as design thinking, right? Where you have an empathy towards your customer.
mm,
Well, if you create what are called personas for your customers, so you have a half a dozen types of students or staff or faculty or businesses that come to the college, IT oftentimes needs to create that stuff before the business does. So if you have a better way of describing your customers than the lines of business do, suddenly you're seen as even more of an authority. You understand the customer's job to be done, and there's all sorts of help in IT for creating this. Anybody who's doing any sort of development is already working through this kind of design thinking approach or
mm,
customer centered design. But keeping the customer in mind is another way in which you prove yourself to be a business leader, not just a technical dweeb. Of course, you have to know technology to be able to talk to all the people within the IT organization.
mhm,
And that's the first stage of leadership. You have to prove that you're not an idiot, right? You don't have to know everything, but you have to know enough to be able to know whether something is valuable or not and whether the solution is valuable or not. But you really move your career to a different level when you work outside the boundaries of IT by
mm,
stopping your parenting approach and by creating customer personas or profiles or other understandings that take you ahead of the business in understanding what your customers want.
Correct. This goes back to your point earlier that understand your customers, right?
Yeah,
Understanding the customers and aligning ourselves to the customers. Because at the end of the day, IT is a support organization, right? So our answer to any of customers' requirements and need has to be yes for us to be a successful organization. To your
yeah,
point about between yes and no, but sometimes the comes with some contingencies, such as you have to find the approval from your business partners, you have to prioritize with others, and you have to find me the funding and stuff like that. There are
yeah.
some disclaimers that comes with it, but our answers most of the time has to be yes in the sense that we want to serve our customers to fulfill their requirements.
Right. I want to touch on one thing, expand on one thing you brought up about IT as a support organization.
Mhm.
Um, Most IT organizations are support organizations, right? They're looking to find the right products and operate those things with excellence. And
Mhm.
there's kind of a treadmill of that. But I think the most differentiating IT organizations move beyond support by becoming a partner in mission with their businesses. So by saying yes, they're sitting alongside and consulting and imagining where technology can make a difference. And then at the next level, the most powerful level, they're a driver of mission. So
Mhm.
not only a partner in mission, but a driver in mission.
Right.
We're understanding the transformative capabilities of technology takes you from the back seat to the driver's seat to the navigator. And the navigator is going to get you where you want to go. The driver has the skills to turn and hit the accelerator.
Mhm.
And the back seat is really just sitting there, giving advice nobody wants to hear. So, if you can get your technology organization to
Mhm.
move beyond operational excellence, to be a partner in mission by being consultative, and then to be a driver of mission by showing that modern strategies of successful businesses involves differentiating use of technology over the competition. Well, if you can differentiate your use of technology at Harper College compared to the other choices your students have,
Mhm.
you'll create a different organization. And in that case, you're truly at the level of being a business leader and transforming IT from not just being support,
Mhm.
but to being seen as the differentiating strategic driver in the organization.
Excellent. You nailed it. Great. Thank you. Well, we talked a lot about work.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your hobbies. What are your favorite hobbies?
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, well, maybe not interesting, maybe all technology folks have this, is that I like doing things that get me away from technology. So I love running and biking because it allows my head time to express what's going on in there.
Mhm.
We see this with individuals all around. We're so interrupt driven
Mhm.
that we live on the surface of our minds, right? And so running and biking gives me a chance to get past that and just kind of dwell in the substance of what's going on in my head that I rarely am in touch with. And so I just really like those prolonged, active downtimes away from technology and heavy thinking, because then great thoughts arise that have always been there, but I never knew them. And then on a really odd note, um, I love giving talks on the intersection of faith and art.
Mhm.
So, I love art history. I love the depth and the meaning, the beauty, truth, and goodness that's inherent in all art, and trying to bring that out to the level of lived faith. So I give a lot of talks in that realm. So that allows me to expand my mind in something that's completely unrelated to what I do during the day at work.
Wow, very interesting. That's great. Okay, which business-related book would you recommend for my audience, Greg?
Yeah, about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, I became aware of a book called Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Sharmin at Stanford. And what I love about this book is, I don't know about you, Riaz, but I've taken a bunch of assessments, right? I've taken the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, I've taken
I
DISC,
too.
I've
Yeah.
taken Strengths Finders, you name it, I've taken it. And all those are interesting and they tell me a little bit about myself by giving me some language, but they're not really actionable. And what I love about this concept of positive intelligence is that uh, Charmin talks about 10 different what he'll call saboteurs, which are ways in which we think between the stimulus and the response
Hmm.
that impacts how we go about doing something. And he's got this little assessment in which my top two saboteurs are hyper logical,
Mhm.
and then I'm a pleaser. So let me pick on pleaser as an example, because this is how it impacts me in terms of giving me new ways of acting. I am too focused in on whether other people are going to be happy or not based on what I do or don't do. And so
Hmm.
when I have to face difficult decisions, my desire to please other people often causes me great anxiety and often causes me to make the wrong decisions because I'm making the decision in light of the short term relationships I have around me rather than the long term importance of the decision. And so, what he does is he identifies what our primary saboteurs are, the things that get in our way of making good decisions. And he would go so far as to say, all the anxiety in our life,
Hmm.
all the conflict in our life is due to these saboteurs, as he calls them. And that if we started listening to the other side, the sages, so if you imagine like the little cartoon with the little devil on one side and the angel on the other, right? If we started listening to our sages, those things that truly do call us to be the best version of ourselves and call out the best in others,
Mhm.
those would lead us to an anxiety free, high accuracy set of decisions, high potency decisions. I'm not doing justice to his book, but it's the first time I've taken an assessment
Mhm.
where it's immediately obvious to me what I need to do to start thinking and acting more effectively and getting rid of a lot of the stress and anxiety that I put on myself
Hmm.
simply because I have these saboteurs that I've selected in my life that I place between the stimulus and my choice of how I'm going to respond. And the sage allows me to choose to respond really positively for myself and others. The
Hmm.
saboteur really gets in my way and pulls me into old habits that are often productive but often self-defeating.
Okay, sounds like an interesting book. Many of my audience are self-driven in terms of their career growth and development. I'm sure they'll find this positive intelligence book and it might benefit some of the folks here.
In addition, let me interrupt for just one
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
He's got a great 1 hour long talk. So if you just search Shirzad Sharmin, so it's Shirzad,
okay.
Shamin, Chamine, and it's called Positive Intelligence. There's just some really good videos that will give you the gist of what this is all about.
Hmm.
And then you can read the book, take the assessment, and figure out what to do. But
Okay.
it's oftentimes helpful to have that companion where you just kind of get the high level of the
Yes.
book from the
Yeah.
author themselves. And you'll see how compelling this guy is. He's
Like a
really amazing.
trailer to the actual book. That's kind
Correct.
of
Yeah.
excellent. So is taking a personality test a requirement to get the full benefits of this book, or how is that
Yeah,
package?
so he doesn't have you take a personality test, but he does have you take an assessment where he helps you understand which of these 10 saboteurs you are most likely to reach out to.
Mhm.
And then he's got these great, if you do that assessment, he's got these great follow ups, like 3 emails a week. So this is, not just a one and done sort of thing, where he gradually helps you learn how to overcome those saboteurs and act differently, more confidently, and more happily in life. I'm not a big self help book person,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't write this as a self help book, but it really is helping me in many ways to understand things that have often been a challenge for me in business and in personal life. So, despite my intent, I've read and have now loved a self help book.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Greg.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Last but not the least, where can my audience find more about you, Greg?
Yeah, well, certainly you can look at the College of Lake County website.
Okay.
So you'll see a lot of the impact of the work that I and the folks I serve in IT are doing to make that experience better. And then, of course, you can look me up on LinkedIn. Greg Kozak at College of Lake County, and you can get in touch with me that way if you have any further questions or follow-up.
Wonderful. Greg, I thoroughly enjoyed our discussion. The thing I like about your conversation is you're very generous in sharing your experiences and background without any hesitation. So I really appreciate that. I learned a lot from you today, and I'm very positive that my audience will too. So appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a real joy to talk to you today.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do me a favor and rate this content wherever you're listening to, and share your feedback as a comment. Join the LinkedIn group named IT Leadership Community led by Riaz. That is RIAZ as in zebra, which can be a stepping stone in your career, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, CIO Talk with Riaz. See you in the next episode.